itself with unique rights above and beyond those of the indigenous population. And now they have a solution which gives everyone equal rights. That models that Israel could follow.
But Stuart,
the problem is there's so much hostility.
Sorry if I interrupt you, but
go on.
Jimmy, you're about to speak. I saw it.
Go ahead.
Yeah, okay. I just wanted to, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I just wanted to clarify that I didn't mean for Israel to exist as a Jewish necessarily, just to exist at all.
Sure. I don't think it would be right if the solution was for those Jews in Israel who are in Israel now to be expelled or sent back to wherever they came from. I think if it's wrong to expel people because of their ethnicity, you know, in the ethnic cleansing of 1947-48, I think it would be the same today. Personally, I would find that very difficult to support. The only thing that I could support with equal rights for all people, regardless of their ethnicity or religion. Now, obviously, that involves a great deal of reconciliation, but that reconciliation has to be based on justice, and that means recognizing the injustices of the past. It means compensating people either with money or with land who lost their property, and some of those are Israeli citizens.
I was struggling to hear clearly what you were saying, Stuart.
Who are, you know, Arabs. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was really trying my best to make out the sentences you were formulating. It was very hard. It was breaking up. One question for you, then I'm going to respond.
I'm sorry.
No, it's not. I think it's difficult. You know, it's just there's not much we can do about it. One question for you is, when you say one-stage solution, you saying a state that it's going to be called, you know, Israel, or are you saying a state solution that's going to be called Palestine?
I don't care. I don't mind. I mean, that's not for me to say. I'm not a member of that country. I don't think it matters what it's called.
Okay, well, what if I see you're a little bit going back into history
on which that state is structured, and if you've got all of the citizens, then I think it's a workable solution.
Right. Well, the point of Israel will strive to be a democratic state, always. But Israel was created as a Jewish state. You have numerous Muslim states around. You have European states. You have the United States of America. You have South America, and Australia, and a lot of other states. And there are those who are Christian. There are those who are Muslim. There's Buddhist. There's many kinds. There's only one very small Jewish state, and for the Jewish people, with Jewish heritage and lineage dating all the way back from the Bible. I'm not sure if you're a person who believes in the Bible, but it is, to certain people, it is an historical source that shows how Israel belongs, essentially to the Jews. They were there. They were there throughout the entire history. They've always had to settle. They've always settled there.
Well,
as far as,
2 points to answer to that.
Yes. As far as
Sorry, I don't know if you've seen, personally, I don't hold much weight in genetics. I think people, wherever they're from, whether they're recent immigrants or whether they've been there thousands of years, I don't think you should differentiate their rights. But this is an argument that Zionists use. But from what I've seen of scientific research, which looks at the genealogy of Palestinians and the genealogy of Jews, it suggests that many of the modern Palestinians are themselves descendants of the ancient Hebrews as well. They're people who converted to Christianity in the 1st century and beyond. They're people who converted to Islam in the 7th century and beyond. Sorry?
You're referring most likely to the Philistines in the times of David.
I didn't hear.
You're referring most likely to the Philistines in the times of David.
No, I'm referring to people who were Hebrews in the biblical sense of being an ancient Hebrew, who since the turn of the last millennium, since the time of Christ, converted to Christianity, or later with the Arab conquest, converted to Islam. Those people are indigenous. Yeah, they're indigenous. They're from that area. They're people who've always lived there. Sure, there's some mixed blood that's come in over the years, but the same can be said with Jews. You get European Jews, you get African Jews, you get Jews from all over the world and all different races. They certainly don't look the same. So of course there's been some intermixing, but fundamentally the majority of Palestinians are indigenous in exactly the same way that some Jews may or may not be indigenous. They have at least the same right genetically to claim that they belong to that land. And now if you look at it this way, it's like if you've got two cousins, one changes religion, the other cousin leaves and goes away and comes back 2,000 years later and says, well, no, this is Jewish land, I'm Jewish. They're still related, they're still cousins.
Well, I am not sure exactly.
And to answer about the,
I'm not sure exactly where you got the scientific proof, where that source exactly comes from. I can tell you that according to Judaism, if a person who intermarries, for example, if a male intermarries, then there's no longer the children, the descendants are not considered any longer Jewish. It is different for if a Jewish woman intermarries, then it is considered Jewish. The child is considered Jewish. That's according to Judaism. The Jews there's been reported to be have recorded the history of the Jews has been recorded for over that 5,000 years, about the same times as Asians, which can beg for the question. There are about 13.2 million Jews and almost 2 billion Asians, and that stems from the intermarriage in itself. But just to sum this up for you, I think what most people need to realize is that people don't look at it from a point of view of is Israel a Jewish state or not. Israel always needs to be seen from it has to maintain its culture as a Jewish state, its heritage as a Jewish state, because there aren't this is really from historical times. Israel is known to be Jewish settlements area. As far as cousins coming back and forth, in the late 1800s, Mark Twain wrote that Israel is a desert. There's nothing there. He said, why is God so mad at this land? He claimed to give it to the Jews. And in the late
there are lots of places, Gil.
Yes.
Gil, there are lots of places you can go in the world that to a tourist. There are lots of places you can go in the world that to a tourist look very empty, but it doesn't mean there aren't people living there. I don't think what Mark Twain said, travelling through, really counts as
I understand
demographic.
That. I'm using it as a description.
But I hear that, and I mean my question to you is what constitutes what is Jewishness? Is it a religion, ethnicity, or is it a nationality? Here it used in all of those terms. Now, if someone marries, maybe they change. Yeah. Now, it's interchangeable. Now, if someone marries someone else, or if someone abandons Judaism and, say, becomes a Muslim, they cease to be Jewish in terms of religion. It doesn't actually affect their genealogy. It doesn't affect their nationality. You see, and this is a problem with the conflation of a Jewish state. It conflates religion with nationality, with ethnicity. I don't think really bear.
Wherever a person decides to settle, where are you from, Stuart?
I'm from the UK.
Did you say UK? I didn't hear that. Did you say UK?
Yeah. I'm in London as we speak.
London. Let's say I decided to move to London myself, and I'm Jewish, so let's say I decided to move. And I'm over a period of 40 years. I'm not going to become necessarily English. However, those who come after me, if I decide to live there, if it's my children or grandchildren, they're going to slowly become part of the English culture. It's inevitable. That's essentially what happens. So whenever one branches out and have his own roots to a different location, within time, from the following generation is going to blend in into where he's actually dwelling at that time. As far as what is a Jewish state, I can tell you on how it is. Jewish state means being Jewish is a religion. That's where it starts. It starts as a religion. It's the first religion that's recorded. As far as heritage and a culture, I think that you can put that in as well. Over time, it's hard not to put that in as well.
But if you're talking, but if you're talking about rights being conferred on the in their outlook, in their culture, are you saying then that's from whatever rights they might be able to their heritage, which would from you?
Can you say that again?
Because this gets complicated. On the one hand, Israel is saying the Palestinians who've been displaced for only 60 years have no right of return to the land that was theirs. 1,500 years, but somehow Jews who were displaced 2,000 years ago do have that right.
It was not theirs for 15 years.
Well, however, Tzipul is the same. Like Palestinians, only 60 years, and they're being told they have no right, but yet allegedly have been displaced for 2,000 years, but claim that their right of return is now. I mean, if you look at any colonial, there are people who can claim land rights. Certainly in Africa, that's a big issue. Land redistribution is a big issue. We've seen what's happened in Zimbabwe. South Africa is trying to deal with those issues in different ways.
Yes, but
there has to be a point at which you say, well, the person who lives there.
This is really what's happening. Apartheid is a state that uses laws to segregate others, that's racially discriminating against others. I'm not sure if you've been to Israel or not, but if you go there, you will see
on whatever.
Sorry.
So it can be religious apartheid.
Well, no, not necessarily. No.
I'm saying it doesn't have to be racial. It can be ethnic. It can be religious. It can be national.
Jerusalem, you will see the endless amount of religions. You have the Christians who have part of Jerusalem, and you have the Muslims who have part of Jerusalem. You have the Jews who have part of Jerusalem. There's no religious apartheid there either. There are Israeli, Palestinian women who sit on the Congress as well as
who gets building?
Who sit on the Congress?
Sure.
Congress,
And in apartheid South Africa.
Can I ask both of you something?
Yes, I just want to make one quick point. What you were saying, how Israel. So
sure.
You will see, you see equality among Israeli Jews and Israeli Arabs. There isn't laws.
Can I answer that?
Sure.
The conversation we just had.
I mean, from what I read and what I see and what I hear, I mean, there were those Palestinians who in 19 were displaced within Israel. I think off the top of my head, about 50 of them or something like that. These people were displaced within Israel, but became Israeli citizens. They were then declared present absentees, which is an Orwellian present and absent at the same time, contradiction in terms, and on the basis that they had their land confiscated, owned, went to the state because they were declared present absentees. That was an act of law that went through, the full legal process. And those people were dispossessed even though they weren't refugees within their own country, even though they were Israeli citizens. We see the same happening with the Bedouin, who were Israeli citizens, village demolished. The law isn't applied equally. Palestinians can't get building permits. Palestinian properties are declared illegal and demolished, or they're taken over by Jews as part of expanding the Jewish population within Jerusalem. Certainly in the West Bank, where Jewish settlements are set up, you can't tell me that a Palestinian, an Israeli Arab, as they're termed, can go and live in a Jewish settlement in the West Bank. There isn't equality. There's a facade of equality, but when it really comes down to it, there isn't equality. Even on the immigration policy, you have to be Jewish to emigrate into Israel, or you have to be born there. To be born there, you have to have survived the ethnic cleansing, being dispossessed, and still have remained there. I don't think you can say there's a real equality. I think it's a facade.
If I can respond to that,
and even in South Africa, where there was apartheid, there were still people. There were still people who collaborated with the state, even in South Africa. There were Bantustans, they had African leaderships who worked with the state. To say there are Palestinians in the governmental process and institutions or judges, I mean, that's irrelevant. That really doesn't mean anything.
Essentially, I don't think it's irrelevant, because when one makes claims that Israel's an apartheid state, and you show that there are numerous Arabs, you have about almost 2 million Arab Jews who have Israeli citizenship, who enjoy rights more than any other neighboring states around them, which is unquestionable. What you're singling out, you're singling out individuals who were displaced for a reason that the part that I was taking from them is the part that really essentially belonged. They belonged to Israel from the beginning. So whenever they were moved, they received, every time you have Palestinians that are removed, they're always having humanitarian aid. They always have financial support. They receive.
Sorry, you broke up. Can you repeat that?
I said Israel's financially supports Gaza. And Israel financially provides. They have the water, electricity. In fact, in these areas, products are actually cheaper. And if you actually look at the Western Bank as opposed to Gaza, you have Gaza as a place that is controlled by terrorist groups who constantly attack Israel, and then you have the West Bank. That used to happen, but as you realize, the West Bank has been able to live with Israel. Ever since then, you realize, people look at Gaza and say it's such a poor country. There is inequality alongside. There's unfair. There's so many checkpoints where Palestinian women and men and children are being aggressively treated. What most people don't know is, you have, unfortunately, Hamas puts, a lot of bombs in baby carts, in ambulances, things that you as a citizen, as an individual, when you see it on the news, you say Israel's a heartless state. Because they stop an ambulance, a person who requires medical help. And then when you see this, you're unaware of the fact that there's bombs planted in the air.
With respect, Gil.
You're unaware of the fact that there's bombs planted in the
Stuart.
So
with respect, Gil, all of those things.
When you look at
talk now.
They seem unfair. But
yeah, go ahead, Jimmy.
Let me finish the one I was going to make is that in the Western Bank, you see that their economy has, in the last several years, has increased by 10% from the ability to live in peace with us. There are certain things that happen there that are violent. Ultimately, they enjoy 10% increase in their economic standards. They have malls there, they have jobs. It's on a much higher level from deciding not to attack, and their living standards are improving significantly.
Go ahead, Jimmy.
Okay. Well, first of all, you have an echo on your side. You echo our sound.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
So it would be good if you could fix that. But then I also wanted to clarify that that when I was talking about Israel's existence, I was just talking about their existence, period, not as a Jewish, just a period to exist. I don't see that is something that is accepted yet overall. So that was the problem we were talking about before. It was not as a Jewish state. But I also wanted to ask the two of you one question, actually.
I mean, go ahead. Sorry.
I'd like to ask you if you. I would like to ask you if you think that if they could return peacefully and they could sort of sign something that is legally binding, do you think that 750,000 refugees over 10 years could be a good figure?
Well, I think there's many more than that was the number that originally. But I mean, there's a few million I've had children. But I think what there needs to be is a legally agreed process whereby people are either given back land or they're given proper compensation for the land that they lost. And this will be a long process, but I think it needs to be something that it is something that has to be addressed. To go back to Gil's point about Gaza, the fact that Gaza is aid is because the situation Gaza is in relative to Israel. I think the existence of Israel has created these problems for Gaza. I think the existence of Israel has created those problems for the West Bank and certainly the occupation. So I think it's a little churlish to say, well, Israel is helping Gaza and as regards
I cannot hear
the economic advancement. Well,
can you repeat? Can you go back?
Sorry, I'll bring this up.
No, you were breaking up. I hear you clearly, but you.
Yeah, I'm saying. Oh, okay. Oh, sorry. Okay. Yeah, I'm saying that I think it's wrong to say that Israel is helping Gaza when Israel is what's caused Gaza's problems in the very first instance. I mean, it's the blockade. Well, I think the existence of Israel for the last 60 years has led to what Gaza is today and the West Bank, for that matter. So I don't think it's really fair to say, oh, well, now we're helping them.
Stuart, can I ask you a question?
But sorry, Jimmy asked a question. I'll let you address his question and respond to what I said.
Sorry, I'm confused. Are you waiting for me? I didn't really know what's going on.
Yeah, I was waiting for you. Let me sort out some headphones because it does seem to be causing a problem. Hold on.
Yeah, Gil. I asked before if you and Stuart would like to respond to if you think that 750,000 refugees could return over 10 years.
The problem with refugees is you don't. Let me put you this way: for people to return, for Palestinians to become part of Israel, it's a very complicated process. For the reasons being that the intentions of Palestinians that come from these places or oftentimes to hurt Israel. Not all of them, I'm saying. Obviously, that is those that come from Gaza or from other locations. It's very problematic situation because you have unfortunately one Palestinian out of 700,000 can create a huge bombings or a huge attack that can kill innocent lives. To let back refugees is the reason it's a problem is because you cannot tell.
Yeah, but Gil.
Who is genuine, who wants to live in the land, and who wants to attack the land. It has to do with the history of what's been going on. And Winston Churchill himself said, if you don't learn from history, you're bound to repeating it. So that is a problem. That is an essential problem. To allow
sure, but
continue.
Sorry for interrupting you. I just wanted to clarify that I meant that if they were to sign a legally binding agreement to not...
See, that's something that I don't think I can actually answer because if Israel, the only way Israel will engage in such an act, I think, is if there's actually a significant step towards process where you have Palestinian people who are actually willing to recognize Israel as a Jewish state. I think then there's progress to be talked about. Then you're dealing with people who are rational, who don't scream out death to all Jews. Whereas most people, I think Stuart as well, think that it's a battle over the land. Unfortunately, sometimes I'm not even so sure that it's a battle over the land. Sometimes I think of a battle of your culture, of who you are. When you have a group saying our mission is to destroy the Jews and drive them off the map, to me that's not a battle over the land. To me it's a battle of I seek to destroy these people, period. It doesn't start from 1948. It starts from there's a film called Forgotten Refugees that dates back to the Middle East. I'm a Middle Eastern Jew myself. I'm not a European Jew. I come from Middle Eastern descendants. This is something that a lot of people are completely not aware about. There's something called the Forgotten Refugees, who are Middle Eastern Jews who lived in Yemen, who lived in Libya, who lived in Iraq, Iran, all these locations in which suffered discriminatory treatment. Who thousands have died, thousands upon thousands have died. So this is not necessarily about the land. That's the problem I think we have. I think once there is a mutual agreement of Israel's right to exist as a Jewish state. I repeat, as a Jewish state, because that's the reason it was created, as a Jewish state, not just as a democratic state. It must maintain its Jewish projection. It always has to. Otherwise, there's essentially no point to Israel, because that's why it was formulated. So the Jews have a place to go back to. And if I can sum this up, is that over thousands of years, Jews have been discriminated against. Stuart knows, I'm sure Jimmy knows, not just from the Holocaust, from pogroms in 1492, and so on and so forth. There's been consistent, persecution towards the Jews, and the Jews need to have a home. So that's at least how I see this, whole situation.
Okay, thanks for the answer.
In London.
Yeah. I just wanted to ask you, could maybe clarify for me what...
There's a lag. I apologise if it seems I'm interrupting.
Israel...
There's a lag.
No problem, Stuart. I wonder, Gil, if you could explain to me what Israel being a Jewish state actually means. What the difference is between a secular state and a Jewish state.
I think I think if you ask even politicians in Israeli Congress, I think they will struggle to answer that question as well, because it's just this is how it is. You know, Stuart asked me a good question. What is Judy? What is the Jewish state means? It's very complicated to answer, but it needs to be a state where Jews must be their home. I mean, a Jewish state has to, for example, has the majority of it has to go by Jewish, religion and the Jewish heritage, from the holidays to it's so much. I don't even know where to start from. But you have so many secular Jews who don't even partake in the Jewish part of the heritage. They're not considered religious Jews. They're just considered secular. They could say I'm an atheist. Where they could say whatever it is they believe in. But ultimately it must be a place where people go and they know that Jerusalem is a place where people come to pray, or they must know that, you have other sites in northern Israel where, like Haifa or all these places, that have their own part of Jewish projection, or when you go down south, every area has its Jewishness in particular, but I don't think I can essentially define to you in a word or two, in a sense, what does it mean to have a Jewish state. It means that it means your home. It means as a Jew you can come and you can live there. It means that you have that when you go there it's celebrating the Hanukkah, or you're celebrating Rosh Hashanah, which is the beginning of the Jewish year, and you're celebrating that the majority of the place is Jewish. People go to synagogues. To say that it must have religious roots in it. It must have religious roots to maintain the Jewish state, because being Jewish is defined essentially by means that you come from certain people, from certain religion, just like being a Christian comes from certain religion, just being a Muslim comes from certain religion. So it must maintain the religious roots to it. It must at all times. Otherwise, I think it will disappear on the face of the earth.
Do you not see a contradiction?
Like in Sweden,
having a state which is fundamentally ethnocentric.
No, nice.
You're breaking up. Say that again, please.
Begin to reconcile idea. I'm saying, don't you see a conflict between the idea of a Jewish state, and which is basically ethnocentric, where you're asserting the rights of one portion of the population in a land of a varied population, above the rights of all the other groups? There's something irreconcilable about a Jewish state compared to a secular democratic state. You mentioned, me being in London and Jews not being safe in other places in the world. You can go 5 miles less, 3 miles up the road from where I'm speaking to you now, and I assure you there are thousands, many thousands of Jews living in perfect safety, doing their trading, going to the synagogue, exactly as they please in London today, pretty much free from persecution. They don't suffer any greater persecution than any other ethnic minority in this country. It's not perfect, but fundamentally they're safe and they're protected by law and have the same rights as every other British citizen.
No, and I understand what you're saying. The thing is, that's the same thing that happened in Germany. And not in any way, God forbid, am I saying that England is on the same path, but you can't say that that's something that's going to be everlasting. You can't say it's going to stay like that, and therefore you need to have a place where you can go back to. It is your home. It is. You can never rely on other governments.
But it's a shared home.
But it's what I'm trying.
But it's a shared home. It has been for thousands of years. It's not just You see, the problem with the Jewish state is that it's exclusive. You're excluding the other people who've also lived there for hundreds, thousands, even going back to Hebrew times, even perhaps before that to Canaan. I mean, we can get into history, but you're asserting a genetic right to a piece of land that other people also share,
well,
at least equally the same rights.
You need to sharing is not necessarily the problem here. Two-state solution is not necessarily something that I'm against or for necessarily. The only problem I have is how can you share something with someone who seeks to destroy you? That is really in a nutshell for me what it is.
But they could say the same to you. They could say the same to you.
How can they say the same to us?
Because just look at a map. Just look at a map and look at the settlements. I mean, Ahmadinejad never did say to wipe Israel off the map. That's a myth. That's not what he said. But if you look at a map dating back to 1900 all the way to today, it's Palestine that is literally being wiped off the map.
It's actually I actually saw a video of him on YouTube. And on TV where he declares numerous times, I want to wipe Israel off the map. That's what I've saw. I don't know where you get your sources. It's a myth. In fact, as well as Hamas mission statement, terrorist group, is to wipe Israel off the map. That's what it is. That's what I was saying before.
I know about Hamas's mission statement.
So before getting to the topic of land, let's get and I'm not saying this.
I wonder
between generally speaking, before you can get a topic of sharing land, you have to get into the topic of having the ability to recognize the other person. I mean, Israel is the only state ever in history to fight for land and give it up. I mean, it gave up Gaza. It gave up for the sake of peace. But you don't see peace coming. You see 12,000 rockets a year in the last 12 years coming to you. So essentially, at the end of the day,
let's take another example, Gil. Let's take another example. When British colonialists went to the United States. Oh, okay. Sorry, Jimmy.
Yeah, Jimmy. Sorry.
Okay, sorry. But I just wanted to bring up a point here. You, Gil, that you couldn't clearly define for me what it means to be a Jewish state, right? So I was thinking, could you maybe have it like a sort of secular state, but have somewhere in the laws that it should be 50% or more Jews, and then have your Jewish traditions and all, but you have a secular state. Apart from that, would that work?
These are all certainly possibilities, but if Israel remains, in a way where you have about almost 2 million Arabs. In about 20 years, you may have 6 million Arabs, and not as many Jews. Eventually, with time, as time goes on, Palestine, Palestinians will really be much more than the Jews. I think in 20, 30 years, and everyone can understand that, because the rapid growth of Palestinians is significantly higher than the Jewish growth on many levels. So within time, it's inevitable that you will see that Israel is going to be heavily populated with Palestinians. So which is really comes to what you're saying. Can you maintain?
So don't you think that's it? Is that not a very good reason to try and find some sort of accommodation with people now? If I were an Israeli and I try and think what it would be an Israeli, I would think
there must be something that really is fair on both sides. That is people accepting, because if you go based on democratic means, then the ends are going to be that in 20, 30 years, Israel is essentially going to be an Arab state. It's not going to be a Jewish state. So you must find something. I think to find something will start only from when Benjamin Netanyahu. I'm sure I don't know if you're a big fan of him or not, but if you look at it this way, he said it best one time, and that
No.
I don't think you're a big fan of him. I could tell. But there's a lot that he does that I'm not a big fan of either. So don't think that I am either. But I could say that one thing he summed it up accordingly is that if Israel, if the Arabs put down their weapons, their guns, there's no more violence. But if the Jews put down their weapons, their guns, there's no more Israel, and that is the basis of it. And you can never sum this up in a sentence or two. It's a very complicated.
But I mean, is that really true though, Gil? I mean, historically, before
But you missed my point.
Jews lived in Palestine, and it's a very fond of saying, for many hundreds, thousands of years.
The Palestinians,
they lived there throughout the Ottoman Empire.
Yes,
they lived there.
There's no, Stuart, if I was to ask you, what is the capital of Palestine?
They weren't wiped out.
If I ask you, what is the capital of Palestine? Or what is Palestinians' Independence Day? Could you answer me such questions?
But that's a misnomer, I mean, Palestine doesn't have to have had an independent government to exist as a country, to have a culture and a people. Palestine, 1947, before Zionists began to arrive, included the Arab Muslims, the Arab Christians, the Arab Jews, and all of the people who lived in that territory. They're all called Palestinians. Even Herzl himself referred to the territory as Palestine. So I think that's just a bit of a misnomer to try and say, there's never been a Palestine. Palestine has existed, and Jews were able to live there. They weren't ever wiped off the map. It's only since Zionism that people have.
With all due respect, Stuart, Palestine was never a state. It's a historical fact that's known throughout the ages.
It was a terrorist.
That has been created.
True.
But by Yasser Arafat, it is completely. I'm smiling as I'm saying this because it has been a fact that it's a fact that a lot of people know but choose not to address. It is a myth that has turned into a fact. I mean, if you look back,
or think it's not relevant.
Well, it maybe to certain people it may
but,
be.
Because
guys missed the
Kenya
point.
was not in its own right.
The point I was trying to make before.
Kenya was a group of Africans that was fought by the British Empire, but there were still Kenyans. The point is, nationality is not just about being in government or having an independent state. It's a question of to a country having a heritage and a culture. I mean, where was the Jewish state for 2,000 years? For 2,000 years.
There's history records that the Jews have been. The Jews have all over the world, but
and the Palestinian state, because from Roman times until 1948, Jewish state was never a Jewish. But yet you assert there is still a Jewish.
No, the Jews have settled in the Jewish state. They have been there. There's always a proof that there's always groups of Jews who have settled there. Always, either and the reason why I know this is because I study.
That's not the criteria you're using for Palestine.
Well, no, you asked where the Jews were, so what I'm trying to say is that the diaspora, the Jews being all over.
Yeah, no, I know where they were. I know they were. What I'm saying is, you're saying Palestine never existed because it didn't have an independent state. Well, for 2,000 years,
I was just asking a question.
Israel didn't exist.
Well, I was just asking a question of kind of like a question of nobody can answer it, or most of the a significant number of the Palestinians actually came from Jordan. They settled from Jordan. I don't know if you knew this, into Israel. And a significant number of these Palestinians from time to time. But essentially, if you look at the Romans have created the name Palestine. It was a name that was created, and there's no genealogy or roots connecting to these Palestinians. They were actually called Philistines. They were not called Palestinians, and they adopted this name. But it's actually a fallacy. If you look deep into the history of it, you will see and understand that this is actually a myth. You know, people. There's something it's mind-boggling to me because I looked into it and I've read about it, and I promise you, Stuart, if you look deep within it, and we have this conversation again, you will see exactly what I'm talking about. If you look deep into the history of what's going on, you will see everything. Well, I hope you look at the right sources. That
shows something completely different.
Sorry?
I mean, you're asserting these people were Philistines. You're asserting that these people are descendants of Philistines. The evidence, the genealogical evidence that I've seen suggests that actually they were Hebrews or other indigenous people as well. They're indigenous to that area. And I think this is one of the recreations of history that the Zionist state has made, to say that these people are somehow itinerant, that they're somehow immigrants, that they're actually not belonging to that land from, thousands of years ago. I don't think you can actually prove that scientifically. I think that's just an assertion.
You know what? I will come back.
Can I come in and just say something?
Yes.
I just wanted to clarify something, because you sort of missed my point before when I talked about when I asked you if maybe Israel could accept to be like a secular state, but have like one law or something that made it like Jewish and have Jewish traditions. Because if Israel would be able to have a state that was secular and not Jewish, it would be an easier sell to the Arabs, to the Palestinians, and that would make it easier to make an agreement and make peace. And I was trying to compare, for example, with Sweden, and I think also the UK actually, where we have a government that is not Christian or so. My country is Protestant, but we are mostly atheists here, and I think it's true for Britain actually. So we have a separation of state and church, like in many countries do.
Right.
And I was thinking that maybe Israel could do that too, and thereby make it easier to make a peace process. So
I lost track of time. I was really into it with you guys. It was very interesting. What I would just would you guys like to conclude with something? I just need to run. I would love to sit here and continue chatting. But would you like to conclude with something, Stuart? Should I conclude first? Jimmy, I just want to ask you, how did you guys want to go first? Should I go first?
Yeah, I'm happy to go first.
It's either or.
You can
okay.
have the last. I'll say what I almost said earlier, and that's imagine that my future security and the security of my children and grandchildren would be best secured by finding a meaningful, peaceful settlement with the other people who live in the country that I claim as my own. I would look through peace through justice and not try and rely on military security and violence to protect myself. I would look for a solution, and that would involve one state with equal rights for all people, regardless of their religion, their ethnicity, whether they're recently returned immigrants from Europe who are Jewish, or whether they're imagined to be immigrants from Jordan or any of the other Arab states that are around. Equal rights for all people is, in the 21st century, a fundamental basis for any state that wants to call itself a modern state. So, that's the direction I would do if I wanted peace. And just to say, in South Africa, before the end of apartheid, there were plenty of white people there saying, if we allow black majority rule, the whites will be run into the sea and they'll be destroyed, and all of our white European culture will be destroyed, and everything we've built over the last 50 years will be gone. It didn't happen. People live in peace there. It's not perfect. It's a long way from being perfect, but it's a radical improvement on what went before. And black people and white people and mixed race people all live together in a state of equality with equal rights under the law. And all the fears that those white people had of what would happen after the end of apartheid to pass. Because, I mean, you spoke about Gaza and the Hamas and people wanting to just kill Jews. These are emotional reactions that people have to occupation. I think the majority of people, wherever they are in the world, want to live in peace. They want to be able to bring up their children to advance themselves economically and live a peaceful, secure life. And I think if Palestinians were given the opportunity, whether they're from Gaza or the West Bank, to do exactly that, then you would see a massive reduction in the militancy of some sections that do say, let's kill the Jews. It's not because people are Jews, it's because they're occupiers and colonialists. From their perspective, that's how they see you. That's why they're so militant. Give people justice and all of that anger will disappear. And then hopefully one day, your grandchildren and their grandchildren can play in the street together, go to the same school, drink in the same cafes, and perhaps even marry each other if they want to as well.
As much as it's hard for you to believe, it's what you're saying is actually happening now. You have Arab kids and Jewish kids that are actually playing together, and you have Jewish people who are marrying Palestinian people, Palestinians. These things are actually happening today. As much as you'd find it hard to believe, they're happening, and there is equality among them. I'm sure to every general statement, there's always exceptions. I'm gonna start by saying Winston Churchill is one of my personal favorite historical figures. And like I told Jillian before, I think you just stepped in.
Really?
Yeah. He said if you don't learn from history, you're bound to repeating it. I don't know if I got it word for word. But I can't. I gotta say that essentially what I want to say is looking at history and looking at the past of the Jews. As a Jew, that's right. I am more sensitive than someone who is not Jewish. Every group of nations have experienced persecution to some degree, but I think you would agree with me that there's no other country and there's no other group of people who experience persecution more than the Jews. And to really go out on a limb and say that the reason why you have Hamas charter saying we're here to destroy the Jews is only because they're being occupied and they're so militant only because they're being occupied. That is just simply not true. When their mission is to kill innocent lives of babies and of women, of children, of everyone just innocent who's just Jewish, and you see this across the world. And you see many Jews. You saw the shooting in France of this guy going to Jewish school and shooting Jewish kids. This is around the world. This is not something just in Israel. This is something that is essentially, it's not really debatable. So this does not stem from a battle over land. This stems from a battle of ideologies. This stems from a battle of extremism versus westernization and modernism. Because to them, to those who seek to destroy the Jews just for being Jewish, this is not a question of battle over the land. Israel has given up the land. It's the only country to ever give up the land after losing thousands of lives. After many wars, they've given this all up just to try to create peace. They've tried these routes. No country in the right mind would ever do that. No country would allow thousands of rockets to be shot at them without responding. No country in the world. I don't think this is a battle over the land or over one being occupied. or one being. I'm sure these things are certainly not pleasant, but over the years, what I want to conclude with is you have one party who refuses to realize the existence. If they were to say, I am willing to work with the Jews, I recognize them as the Jewish, as they have the right to exist, then from that point on, you can talk about land. But when they say, I have no right, they have no right to exist, that is not a sign whatsoever of willing to work. That is not a sign. That is a sign of we reject their ideology, and we don't want them near us. We want them to destroy. We want them jumping to the sea. And how a person decides to look at it, this is the evident truth. I mean, you go into whenever there's a fight between two people, you go in there by saying, no matter what it is, I'm not going to understand this other person. I'm not going to listen to him. I'm not going to give him a chance. Nobody does that because you're looking to create peace, and that's really what's happening here. It's a battle of ideologies, not over land. It always has been, and I hope it changes. I do.
Okay.
During World War II,
I can say that
when Jews were fleeing Europe, the one place that they were welcomed was in the Middle East. I don't think it's Muslims just want dead. Historically, there've been great ties between Jews and Muslims.
I never said all.
That's fallen apart, really, since.
I never said all Muslims.
Or Arabs, or whatever it is that. I mean.
There's just extremism groups who feel that Jews don't have the right to exist. It is their charter, and if they look for peace, even if they tried, I think they would, and they would state, we as you have Egypt, you have Jordan, you have all these neighboring states, with the exception of Iran, who might not be Israel's biggest fan, but based on their actions, you can see that they're agreeing that Israel has the right to exist, or at least maybe not by words necessarily, by actions. You can see that so far there's been peace. It's between them or Jordan or them in Egypt, because they have come to realize that we have the right to exist. And look at the peace. You're giving one example.
I don't.
Just look at what's going on. Around us. Those who have the right, who have realized that we have the right to exist, have lived in peace with us.
I think people would recognise the right of Jews to exist in Israel if there wasn't an insistence on recognising Israel as a Jewish state. Even in Iran, there are 40,000 Jews who still live in Iran. There have been Jews historically throughout the Middle East. Even in the Caliphate, Jews played an important part in that. Historically, those Islamic states and Jews have always been together, always had a close relationship.
Yes,
that hostility has only emerged since 1947.
It was never safe there. It was always a roller coaster.
Well, exactly. How do you think your family got there in the first place?
But these countries are Islamic regimes who are extremists who there's no democracy there. Women don't have the right to vote. Women can't walk as they wish to in the streets. I mean,
sure.
You cannot make the same comparisons. Israel is not an extremist state. It's not a state that tells women how to walk in the street.
There are places in Israel.
If you take the secluded areas where you have very religious.
But can I come in also?
Oh yes, I'm gonna
wants to go. I apologize.
I apologize too. I'm sorry, Jimmy. And I was just gonna say, Stuart, I apologize if in any way I offended you or if I said something that upset you. I want to take this time to apologize. I hope I didn't say anything that was offensive towards you.
Not at all.
Okay. And I'm gonna listen to what you have to say, Jimmy. Then I have to run.
Not at all. Likewise.
And not at all by me either. And I enjoy this. And
okay.
I hope to come on again.
Well, nice talking to you. And it's
likewise.
Yeah, no, it's been a pleasure talking to you, and a very civil and rational conversation, more so than the one that went before, I have to say.
Definitely.
So it's been a pleasure, and good luck to you,
going
Gil.
on here too. So
Yeah.
I hope to continue.
Okay,
all the time
Jimmy,
again.
all yours.
No, I just want to say that I have.
All right.
Yeah, I would like to also, sometime again, Gil. I have appreciated to speak with both of you, and my English is not the best since I'm Swedish, and I think I got sort of engaged in the previous conversations. I got a bit worked up, and I to feel like eager to solve this problem, but I know it's damn hard, and I don't expect I could actually solve anything. But I feel like I really want some solution to whole conflict.
Me too.
And I can say that I agree with much of what Stuart says. Good. I agree with much of what Stuart said about equal rights, for example. I think, of course, that Palestinians should have the same rights as Israelis, and that they should have a state, and they should have they should have the same water quality, water amount, sanitation, electricity, and all of the basic things secured, of course. And they should also have their own separate states, and they should have had that 64 years ago. And those two states should have lived side by side, and it's that we have had 64 years of conflicts. It's a shame, really. A shame for the people and a shame for the Holy Land. So they should honor the land, and they should honor the people. They should honor both religions plus Catholicism, and make peace, and make this land sort of like what they call Israel, a land of milk and honey. I think they call it. So I would like peace. My conclusion.
We all do. We all.
And I like your points too, Gil.
Okay. It was nice.
I have heard good things about USA and Israel also. So.
All right. Take care, guys. Nice.
I think so too.
You guys
Until
can
next
Facebook
time.
me. Last name is Gil Grafi.
Yeah.
Grafi. We can always chat on Facebook and have these conversations
Okay.
as well.
Can you type that?
Best of luck to you guys.
Gil, can you type that?
All right, you too.
Same to you.